All right. How can I help?
I just trying to think how to start it off. I should have had my script prepared.
That's okay.
My brother describes me as a spiritual magpie. I kind of look at different stuff. I've had, I guess, severe physical limitations for most of my life in one form or another. I'm 58 now. You don't want the whole story. We've got an hour. You don't want me talking for an hour about my story, I'm sure. I'm not sure I want to hear me talking about my story for an hour. Yeah, I guess physical limitations. And it's really just to get a handle on where physical problems fit into non-duality. My background is essentially Christian Science, probably a fair weather Christian Scientist. My mother, again, was even more of a fair weather Christian Scientist than I am. You know, when the rubber hit the road, we would both probably go scurrying to doctors, etc., to get problems sorted. I had probably a fairly uneventful first 20 years of my life. One or two childhood problems, stammer, back problem. So, you know, a sort of background of limitation. I had meningitis when I was 20. Quite, you know, a near-death experience a couple of times, left with nerve problems below the waist, which I recovered from largely, although they seem to come into play in the last 4 or 5 years with mainly bladder problems, stuff like that, which is getting worse, and one or two other physical problems on top of that. So I've kind of taken time out from work. My father died about 6 years ago, and it seemed a convenient time. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, just to try and dive into this stuff a bit more fully. So that's what I've been doing. My days are fairly much kind of groundhog days. I read spiritual stuff. I look at it, videos. I listen to audios. And this is all in an effort. I'm becoming more painfully aware to try and help physically an entity which doesn't really exist. And that is where I think my problems lie. I can't get beyond seeing that this is an entity sitting in this chair that needs to be physically better than it is. You know, it can't do this, it can't do that, it can do many other things, but you know, I suppose human nature, and I know that's a loaded term, human nature is to focus on the negatives. So you always want what you don't have, I suppose. So that's where I'm coming from, really just to try and get a handle on it. I mean, I know the absolute answer is there's nobody sitting here, there's nothing to be done, there's nothing that can be done, full stop.
I would disagree.
And,
right there, I would right there, at that point, I would disagree. Can you honestly tell me there is nothing sitting here?
No, of course not. I'm sitting here. So, yeah.
Right. Now, okay. So, so I think we would both agree, yeah, that it's not Ian sitting there. But something's sitting here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that something that is sitting here, you've been calling Ian your whole life. Now, is that true or false? Not that you've been calling this Ian your whole life, but is this Ian?
No, and I've got a pretty good intellectual grasp as to why it's not. If you'd asked me that question 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'd have laughed at you.
Of course.
But I now know better. But and there's always a but at the end of these things, isn't there? Yes,
Until
I know
there's
better. Yeah, and then, you know, I spent last weekend in hospital, and yeah, there was an Ian. There was an Ian there with problems that needed to be sorted. So yes, intellectually speaking, I know full well I can't find myself in this body. I've looked at videos. I've gone through the exercises. I can't locate myself. It's not here. there's a sense of being. I know I'm here, but yeah, there's me, and there's physical problems. There's a guy sitting here who can't do X, Y, and Z.
So there's still an idea or an identification with this.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Okay. How does that work? The identification with just this. How does that work?
It's me getting up in the morning. It's me that's brushing my teeth. It's Ian that's brushing his teeth. It's Ian that's doing it. Or it's Ian that, I'm going to use that awful word, it's Ian that seems to be doing it. My intellect, my study, my knowledge tells me that it's not me doing it. It's consciousness, the infinite, which is individuated into this form sitting here. That's what's doing it. That's the life force doing it. That's the driver, or that's the piece on the board, whatever you like to call it. It's not me pulling the strings, even though, my goodness, it feels like it. It looks like it. Yeah, I mean, to the outside person, it looks like me pulling the strings. But
okay. You used an interesting word just a moment ago, feel. What does Ian feel like?
My experience of Ian feels limited. That's probably not a direct answer to your question, is it?
No. What does Ian what does Ian feel like?
Don't know is the honest answer. I can tell you what my experience of Ian feels like. What Ian feels like, don't know.
Okay. And my next question would be, can Ian feel? You've had a good look, Ian. You know what this me is. You've had a real, I know you have, just from everything that you've just said, I know you've had a good look. So having had that good look, can Ian feel?
Yeah, the answer has to be no.
Right. Then we'll go back to the first question. What does Ian feel like?
Feels like this.
Okay. So then we go back to the second question. Can Ian feel?
No, but there is something sitting here that can do this, can't do that. So there has to be something here that can feel.
Right, and that's something that's here that can feel. Yeah. Is it the one complaining?
No.
Is it the one that's saying it shouldn't be like this? I'd rather it be like that, or
no?
No. So what's doing the complaining?
This concept of Ian.
Just thoughts.
Yeah.
It's just thoughts, Ian. Clearly. It's just thoughts. Like my teacher said, still says, what's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? What's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? And the short answer is
nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So what is it that's creating the seeming problems? Thoughts. Now, it's really interesting because I believe that where you currently find yourself, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But I believe where you currently find yourself is you've identified that thoughts just happen. Number one, yeah? I know you've seen that, yeah? So thoughts just happen. However, there's three parts to this from your experience where you currently find yourself, yeah? Thoughts just happen. And there's a me that can have thoughts about the thoughts that are just happening. And the thoughts that the me has, they're real thoughts. They're my thoughts. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's what seems to be happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, and not just me, others are saying is, yes, there's thoughts that are just happening. That creates this seeming me is those thoughts that's just happening. And the apparent thoughts that the seeming me is having are also just contained in those thoughts. All there is thoughts. And it's thoughts that are separating out the me from the thoughts that are just happening. It's just all thoughts that's saying that. Is that not true?
Yes. Yes, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So what's happened is, and this happens for all of us, no one is exempt from this. Yeah. Somewhere around the age of 2, when we start to learn language, when we start to learn how to speak, when we start to understand my name is Ian, yeah, and that's mum, and that's dad, yeah. When we start to learn language, somewhere around that period of time, yeah, thoughts start to identify with this beingness, this presence, this consciousness, and the thoughts start calling this experience of being and consciousness and so on and so forth, starts calling it Ian. This is Ian. I am Ian. And I'm conscious and I'm aware and I can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, says thoughts. Now, prior to those thoughts coming online around the age of 2, who were you then? You couldn't say I was Ian. You hadn't even learnt yet that you were an apparent Ian. Hadn't been learnt. And that's also why we can only remember back so far, Ian. Because if you've memory is recalling, but we recall using thoughts. Now, if there are no thoughts yet that have developed, yet there wouldn't be thoughts rather that had developed until we start to learn language. All your thoughts are in language, your own mother tongue. Yeah, all of them. Yeah. And we go, why can't I remember being 6 months old? Thoughts had not yet developed because we had not yet learned to speak. Yeah. And then somewhere around the age of 2, somewhere around there, yeah, thoughts start saying, I am this. Just thoughts start to say that. And then as more and more time goes by and we become more and more conditioned, and more of the Ian character is implanted. You're not responsible for your me. It was put there. Totally put there. It would depend on what environment you were brought up in. If you were born in China, all your inner dialogue would be in Chinese. Your name wouldn't be Ian. It might be Lao Tzu, for argument's sake. Yeah. I sometimes use that as a pointer, like, because I'm sure you've been able to identify that all of your problems are related to what mind is saying. All of them. All of them. Every single problem that you believe you're having is a product of mind saying, I have this problem. It shouldn't be like this, or it should be like that. Yeah. So let's just imagine for a moment that all of your inner dialogue right now, and I mean all of it, suddenly turned into Chinese language. What problem would you have now? Would you know who you were if it all turned into Chinese language? Yeah. So the whole personal me identification, is a product of thoughts that just happen. Remember? They just happen. The problem is, until we see this more clearly, we believe, yes, I understand, thoughts just happen. And me, Ian, am aware that thoughts just happen. says this, is there awareness of thoughts? Yes, but that is aware of the thoughts is not Ian. Ian is the thoughts. Ian is a product of the thoughts. Because if we took all those thoughts away, if I could create amnesia in you, right now, amnesia, personal amnesia I'm talking about, would Ian still be sitting there?
No.
Like not at all. Yeah. So this Ian character is a product of thoughts. It's a product of mind. Yeah. And like I said a moment ago, somewhere around the age of 2, thoughts starts to say, I am here. This is me. This is my experience. I can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, and I'm conscious and I'm aware. Is there consciousness and awareness and seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling? Yes. Yes. But it's not Ian's. Ian gets created by thoughts. And that Ian character was put there. And it started to be put there when you started to learn language. And it will depend on what environment you've grown up in or what culture you've grown up in as to what seemingly apparent personal me character will get created. But prior to that, prior to 2 years of age, you still were, but not an Ian character. So normally if you ask someone, when were you born? And I'll give a year that they were born. You weren't born at birth when you came out of your mother's womb. Ian wasn't born then, not at all. But that's what we say, dualistically. We believe we have a start and a finish. Born, one day I'll die. We all say it. I was born such and such a year. No, you weren't. You didn't come into existence until around the age of 2, when language started to be learnt. What choice do we have at the age of 2 as to how our me is going to be? We're even having to learn, none at all. We're even having to learn the language of our parent or parents. And if you were born in China and both your parents spoke Chinese, all of your inner dialogue right now would all be in Chinese. Which brings me back to what I said a moment ago. If it all turned to Chinese now, who or what would be sitting here? There wouldn't even be the thought, oh, there's a strange sound going on. There's a strange language going on in my head that I don't understand, because that state would also be in Chinese. Do you understand? So just try and imagine it's just all turned to Chinese. Now it would just be noise, like a motorbike going by. No meaning, no relevance, nothing. Just a sound or sounds like a motorbike going by. What do we say when we hear a motorbike going by? Nothing. We don't say anything about a motorbike. It's just a sound. So there's all this internal dialogue, all this internal sound that gets identified with. And it's strange, because if you look at it, like when I said to you, if I could create amnesia in you, which means what? All we've done is we've erased personal memory. That's all we've done. So now let's come back to, all right, we haven't induced amnesia into you, and let's look at it. Who or what does this mean? The closest I ever got, Ian, to being able to work out what this seeming me character was this statement. Holy shit, I am memory. And then what? And here's the process. The memory, which is apparently a recollection of the past, we bring that into the present and call that me. I don't know how much, I don't know how closely you've looked at the concept of time, but that's ridiculous. There is no past at all. Yeah? But mind says there is. Why? Because it's dualistic. It will say I had a start and one day I'm going to have an end. Yeah. So the memory is not something that's from the past at all. It just arises presently as thoughts about apparently something that happened in the past, but there isn't a past. It's a concept. This whole me character, as I've just pointed out to you, is dependent or contingent on time. And time is a concept. It's not real. It's a concept. Albert Einstein said that. We, human beings, invented time. We invented it as a concept. Like we invented numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Show me number 3. And what we would ordinarily do, we might go, well, there's 3. No, I said, show me number 3. And then we might get really clever and go, oh, okay. No, that's a symbol of 3. Now, show me 3. And you can't. You actually can't. We apply the concept to that, and that. Yeah? But there is no 3 as such. It's a concept. A workable one, but it's a concept. It's not real. Yeah? So this me character is dependent upon memory. Yeah? Which is a concept. It's to do with time. Do you understand? Time. Yeah. How well can we trust that memory anyway? It changes. We add to it, we take things away from it. Memory. So where you're finding yourself, I believe, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is you're in this 3-phase part, which is, yes, I've identified the thoughts just happened. And yet there's still a me who has my thoughts. Because I can have thoughts about the thoughts that are just happening. So those thoughts seem personal to the me. Yeah. But what I'm trying to show you is all of that 3, that apparent 3 that seems to be happening, is all just happening in mind. All of it.